Hello, everybody, and welcome into another season preview show here at the Hockey Writers YouTube channel. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and we are up to the Seattle Kraken here on our previews. And I've got Jacob Strozyk here, who of course, doesn't cover the Kraken, but knows the Kraken. I mean, we all know most NHL teams. But thanks, Jacob, for coming on and covering Seattle.
Yeah, big Kraken fan. Some might call it a bandwagon, but I don't because one of my favorite jerseys in the NHL, one of my favorite prospect pools in the NHL. I love watching them play. I love watching this team, even though they like to beat Buffalo all the time, but I don't care. It's still fun.
For sure. And I mean, they didn't make the playoffs last season after making it for the first time. They have now missed the playoffs in two of their last three seasons, but they are still a relatively new franchise. Not the newest anymore because the Utah Hockey Club is now the newest team. So they
Technically.
are now, I guess, a veteran of the NHL. So let's jump into the Kraken lineup here and talk about their forwards to start, which saw some additions. Their biggest one, Chandler Stephenson from the Vegas Golden Knights, very underrated center. Probably what was he their first line center until Jack Eichel came along, and not the de facto guy that you would think should be a first line center. But he was, and he was doing pretty well. So he's coming into the Kraken, probably their biggest addition. What do you think about this forward group going into this season? I mean, Stevenson kind of adds that second wave of attack from Matty Beniers.
Yeah, I mean, adding Stevenson in principle is a good thing because of the type of player that he is. He's a good leader. He's a solid, centerman, decent at faceoffs, but around, I think it's like a 48% faceoff percentage. Good scorer, decent two-way guy, and just a good presence overall on the ice. So, having him in principle is a good thing. At the price tag he's at, I think is a little bit high. That's the one thing that I think that they kind of missed on as far as signing him goes. But free agency does that to people. Sometimes you got to pay a little bit extra to get a player like that to show up
Yeah.
on your club. But sometimes that's how it is. But I like having him in town. He's definitely somebody that's going to make a difference in a place like Seattle. Is he going to step into your first line role? He definitely could, even though Matty Beniers is assumed to be de facto uh, first line center role just because
Mhm.
of, what he means to this team and who he is as a player. That doesn't mean that he's going to be guaranteed those first line minutes at all times. Stevenson is known to be able to play that role
Yeah.
on a regular basis. So early on, he might step into that, especially considering how tough of a year Beniers had. They might ease him into it just a little
Mhm.
bit more and give Stevenson a little bit more responsibility early on and, take Beniers back and say, hey, here's what we're going to work on with you and get you back up to speed to where you want to go and just throw Stevenson to the Wolves
Mhm.
and make him the forefront and give him the brunt of the responsibility more than anything else. So I think it's a good addition, and I like what it means towards helping the younger core, bringing
Mhm.
in a veteran like him.
Yeah, and the thing is yeah, you said he's used to playing a top line role. I mean, he played that in Vegas for a while. And he played it quite well. He is not the biggest point producer at all. I mean,
No,
he does put up some goals and points, but he's not a
neither do
guy that's
most
gonna,
people on the Kraken.
yeah, I mean, he's not going to score 30, 40 goals. I mean, but he's going to be able to play with he can play with different types of players, and he's very versatile too. I mean, he can play up and down your lineup, even if he does have to play on the third line. I mean, you don't want him to at that price tag, but he can play a lot all over the place. So he's like a Yanni Gord again. I mean, he's a similar type player, right?
Hmm.
And Gord's still here. He's still a pretty good part of this team. Jordan Eberle was re-signed when everyone thought maybe he was going to move on. What do you think about the rest of the group going in? I mean, you mentioned Beniers. He probably should have a bounce back season after. I mean, he only had 15 goals last season, signed that big extension. Um, you're still having your guys like Eli Tolvanen, Shane Wright will probably have a full season with the team, and we'll talk about their new head coach who had him in the AHL this last season. Where do you see the rest of this group going in?
Yeah, there's still a lot to like because there's a lot of spread out scoring. You mentioned Eberle. You got Burakovsky, who has the potential to put up 20 goals. You got Bjorkstrand, who can put up 20, possibly even 30 goals if you get him going in the right way. You have Yanni Gore, who has the capacity to put up 20 goals as well. You have Jared McCann, who's scored 40 goals before.
Yeah.
And you also have Jaden Schwartz, who's been a consistent scorer for them as well. So you have plenty of depth scoring and consistent scoring to go around, plenty within your lineup. So you don't need Stephenson to be the goal scorer. You don't need Beniers to be the scorer constantly. There's plenty to go around amongst the other, top six, even top nine scoring group that this crew has. There's plenty to be shared in this group. And I like the depth that they've really built. Tolvanen, you mentioned, I forgot to throw him in there. He hasn't really, broken out, but I think he has potential for something like that in the way that he's able to score goals and the way that he fits into this lineup in their power play scheme and the way that he fits into that kind of middle six role. I don't know if he's really a top liner up to this point, but I think he's a good middle six forward that can really do some damage there. So I like the forward group a lot. I think there's a lot to be excited about in the scoring potential specifically. I don't think there's a lot of physicality there. I think that's something that's to be worried about as far as your forward group as a whole. I think there might be something lost in maybe some of your two-way play. But I think that's something that Dan Bylsma, as your head coach, can work with when he has offensive type players. He's good at getting some defensive play out of offensive type players. So the forward group being capable of scoring a lot is something that's exciting. And it's definitely something to look forward to this season.
Mm-hmm. Probably the most physical guy is Brandon Tanev, and he's been hurt lately. He'd be good to have him for a full season, which would be great, right? Because
hopefully a full season.
Yeah. All right, looking at their defense, which saw a big addition. Brandon Montour joins the defense from Florida. I didn't have the same offensive season that he had a couple last season, couple seasons ago when he broke that. When he broke what 70 points. I don't think he's that type of defenseman. I mean, he's probably not going to score that again. But he's still a really good guy. They paid a lot to get him in free agency. He's their only real addition on defense. The rest of them are kind of coming back the same. What do you think about this defense going in?
Yeah, the defense is probably where you get more of your physicality from, if we're bringing up that point. You have Jamie Alexiak, you have Adam Larson, you have Will Borgen. Those are three big bodies. Those are three physical presences that you can have there. But then you have the balance to add to that. You have the offensive presence like Vince Dunn. You have your Brandon Montour. So you have the capacity to kind of balance out the defense with the physicality and the defensive awareness on top of it. So I like the addition of Montour a lot because I think it's not all going to lie on Vince Dunn to constantly be, oh my God, am I the only one contributing offensively on the defensive end tonight? He can kind of take a little bit of a break, and I don't think they're going to be paired together, honestly. No. I think that would be very foolish to stick the two of them together, honestly. I think they should be split up and, be given different partners. But being able to spread that out and use them in the same way, I think would be a great weapon for their defense to have. So I love the addition of Montour as another offensive kind of two-way style defenseman, because he's still a very good, defender, but he is more offensively inclined than probably any of their other defensemen besides Dunn. He could definitely give him a run for his money.
I mean, Montour, that's 73 points in 2022-23. So,
right.
And he went half that last season. He was hurt. though. So I mean,
He was hurt for majority of it. Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know if he's going to hit 70 again, but I think if he has a full healthy season, I don't see why 60 is unrealistic on a high end.
yeah. Yeah, and he still plays a ton. I mean, he'd probably be playing
Right.
23 minutes a night like he did last season with Florida. So yeah, I really like that addition too. He was probably one of the bigger defensemen on free agency, and the Kraken snapped him up. So they were pretty solid top four if you're looking at them compared to most teams. So yeah, I think their defense is probably one of their strong suits going into this season. All right, let's go to their goaltending, which didn't see anything really change, except Daccord's going to be now the full-time backup. So Philip Grubauer is the starter, I guess. I mean, where do you see it? Is there a starter? Is Grubauer the starter? Didn't have a very good season. 899 save percentage, 2.85 goals against average, not good at all. Do you see this more of a tandem more than a starter backup?
I feel like it's not even as much of a tandem as it is a which goalie's hot
Yeah.
type thing, which I guess you can argue is a tandem in this type of in today's NHL. But Daccord took over for a good portion of
Yeah.
last season, and he had some really hot streaks. Grubauer had some moments. He definitely had some good moments. But Daccord took notes from Martin Jones the previous season. He definitely, borrowed his notebook and was just like, how to be a menace as a backup goaltender in the NHL. So and he absolutely ran away with it. And if he can do it again this season, power to him. I think he's a good goaltender. I don't know if he's, start 50 games caliber good goaltender, but you know, could he split, 40 games apiece with Grubauer? Yeah, I think he definitely could do something like that, especially if he's challenging him.
Mhm.
Grubauer needs to be better, period. He he's definitely the better of the two goaltenders skill wise.
Mhm.
So him stepping up and being the goalie that he was back when he was playing in Colorado is necessary.
Yeah.
So that's a must, an absolute must for Seattle this season. And for him personally, otherwise, I think he's going to get shipped out
Yeah.
as soon as possible and get replaced by the next goalie on the market because the goalie carousel happens
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
quickly in the NHL these days, and he can definitely get replaced sooner rather than later. And I definitely think he's on the hot seat more than anybody else around
Mhm.
here.
I agree. I mean, Daccord was the better goaltender for a lot of the last season. Whenever he was in, he was really good. And of course, the numbers were much better too. 2.46 and goals against average 916 save percentage, three shutouts.
Hmm.
Also at the better record, 19, 18, and 11, while Grubauer was 14, 16, and 2. So I mean, they're yeah, looking at the numbers, Daccord probably is the starter going in, but we'll see how they kind of battle it out in training camp, and then of course during the regular season. All right, looking at the Pacific Division, Seattle, of course, fell short. They didn't make the playoffs, so they were in the bottom half. When the season before that, they were kind of knocking on the door, where you're like, "Whoa, this team's actually for real." Are they that team this time, or are they still a middling type team? Will they kind of maybe challenge that top three?
I think they can fight for it. It I don't know if they have what it takes to quite get over the hump on the top teams. I don't know if they can quite overtake, you know, Edmonton
Hmm.
per se, but could they challenge for that fourth spot? Yeah, yeah, I think they definitely could. I think they could be in that mix for the fourth spot in the Pacific and maybe, fight for a wild card in the long run. So they could definitely push for a playoff spot. It'll be down to the wire, last couple of games of the season, really working towards it
Mhm.
and fighting tooth and nail. But I don't think they're among the bottom feeders in the Pacific. They're not your San Jose. They're
Mhm.
not your Anaheim, who's been, sitting near the bottom for the past number of years. They're not your Calgary, who's downtrending and
Mhm.
really, noticeably even more downtrending the more that they sell off more pieces. They're buying pieces. They're
Mhm.
bringing in more, and they're constantly trying to improve. So I think Seattle is uptrending, but just slowly. It's not this huge, massive addition. It's not a buying party. It's just enough to keep the bar moving.
Yeah.
And I think that keeps them trending right, but I'm not sure if it's enough to push them all the way over the hump. I think it'll challenge it, but it might be tough to get there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the thing is there's when you're looking at the top, Edmonton, the Canucks, LA, they're probably the top three teams. I think Seattle can maybe push, like you said, push them a bit, and be a better team this season. I think they're going to be way better. It's just the goaltending, I think, is the biggest question mark for me, because their
Mhm.
defense and, like we said, the forward group has a lot of versatility and a lot of places where you can get goals from. It's can you keep the puck out of the net? And that's what was the problem last season for stretches. So I think that's your biggest one, and we'll see how it all kind of plays out. Well, speaking on that, they do have a new guy behind the bench. We've mentioned Bylsma's name there. He comes in from the AHL, trying to do the John Cooper thing and move from a development league and move with some of the young players that he's coached down there. And there are a few of them that are going to be playing this season. You got Ty Tarte, which we didn't mention, on the forward group, and then Riker
Mhm.
Evans. They both played for Bylsma in okay, my gosh, Coachella Valley.
Yeah.
What's the AHL team? The Firebirds. They
Just call
played
them the
with,
Firebirds. It's easier
yeah.
than Coachella Valley.
So the Firebird, they played for the Firebirds with him. So, he's kind of we know he's not a new coach. I mean, he's been in the
No.
NHL. He's won a cup with the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Mhm.
So I mean, he hasn't been in the NHL for a bit. Of course, coached the Buffalo Sabres for a season. What's it? What do you think about Biosma coming in? I mean, you do have some inside knowledge on him because he did coach the Sabres for a while. I Where do you see him as being coach of the Kraken now?
Yeah, he coached Buffalo from 2015 to 2017, and that was the last time that he was the head coach. There's your fun
Yeah.
fact and your Buffalo connection. Uh, so it's been a while since he's been an NHL head coach. So the question is, does he still have what it takes to be an NHL head coach? And it's definitely something that people are going to question. But his coaching style is really what's going to matter here. He's definitely worked his way back up into the NHL, and he's been successful coming back up into the NHL. He's earned his way back up here. So I don't think it was a bad choice by any means making him the head coach. I think Hackstall was just an average coach as a whole
Hmm.
for the Kraken throughout their, beginnings, and making him the head coach at the start was it almost felt like a knee-jerk decision when
Hmm.
I heard the announcement in the first place. I was like, really, him? There was a bunch of other coaches on the market that you could have picked from. Why did you pick him?
Hmm.
All right, whatever, fine. End of story. Buffalo's never going to win a game because they can't beat Dave Hackstall. Whatever. And it ended up being true. Doesn't matter. Uh, but either way, now that they have Bylsma, I feel like it's going to be a much different type of team,
Hmm.
because he has a different type of system that he plays. He's a much more balanced kind of coach. He moves things around. He adapts much better to scenarios. And back when he coached Buffalo, we used to have this joke. We called him Disco Dan because he would shuffle lines all the time and he was just moving everything around constantly. But that's part of his adaptability,
Yeah.
because he's willing to move lines around to find chemistry and combinations on the fly and in games to make things work constantly. So he's not a passive coach by any means. And that's something that is definitely great to have for a team like this where you have versatility in your
Mm.
lineup. You can move players around to try and find a different combination when one thing doesn't work. So I think having him as your coach is absolutely a match potentially made in heaven here.
Mhm.
And that's something that they recognized when they saw him coaching down in the AHL. So I love the addition. I love bringing him up, and it's definitely a great way to transition him back up into the NHL here.
Mhm. And I mean, coupled with that, he's bringing over Jessica Campbell from also the AHL, first female assistant coach in the
Hmm.
NHL, which and he's praised her work with a lot of the younger guys down in the AHL. So bringing her up, I think, is a really underrated move into the NHL too. And then you got, of course, Dave Lowry. He was there before, but he is a good, I think, a good assistant coach. Of course, coached the Winnipeg Jets as an interim coach for a bit there. But I think the coaching group is a really strong one going into this season for the Kraken because they I think they're going to work really well together with this group. All right, moving into our quick fire. And we're just going to start with our biggest storyline. I think we already kind of touched on it, but is the goaltending the biggest storyline going into this season?
I suppose you can make that argument, but I kind of just had like many questions kind of as the storyline here. And it's can they recapture the magic and make it back into the playoffs? Can the young players take the next step kind of thing? It's that's the storyline for me. It's can all of these small questions
Mhm.
really be answered this season? It's will the young players step up? Will they capture everything and be that good team again? Because they only regressed a little bit. Yeah, they captured lightning in a bottle when they made the playoffs really early on in their team's existence, but that means that they had something there and they
Mhm.
had potential. So now that they're more experienced and they learned something with their shiny new head coach and their new additions on top of that, they have potential to do that again. And with all their additional experience with it. So can they do it? Will they do it? I think they could.
Mhm. There's a lot of little questions that have to be answered for sure. How it's all going to mesh with the new coaching staff, how it, yeah, goaltending, yeah, the new additions, all that stuff is because they were a really good team a
Mhm.
couple seasons ago, and I don't know what happened, but yeah, I mean, growing pains, maybe Beniers' sophomore slump really kind of took because he was really good in his rookie season. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it all kind of gets answered as we go. All right, there's some good candidates for this one. One or two breakout stars for the Kraken here.
I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I'm gonna say it's Tolvanen.
Hmm.
I loved what I saw out of him last season, and I think he can do a lot more if he's given just a little bit more ice time and a little bit
Hmm.
more opportunity. I think he can not only eclipse the 20 goal mark this season, but I bet you he can even push into that 30 goal mark, especially if given more power play opportunity, especially if he is shown how to be a little bit more um, pressuring
Hmm.
and use his physicality to be an offensive type player and not just, skate around the ice waiting for an opportunity and to make his own opportunities
Yeah.
and to be a little bit more of a proactive player. He has the potential for it because he can play physical. So if Bylsma shows him how to do all of that, I think he has the potential for more. So with the coaching with it and how he was last year, I think Tolvanen is a great breakout candidate.
It's a good one. I'm gonna throw Shane Wright in this one because I think it's gonna be a big thing him coming with Bylsma because he had a great season in the AHL last year with Bylsma and he broke out. I think 20 or more. He had at least 20 goals. But he was one of their best players in the playoffs and in the season. And Bylsma praised how he kind of developed from because he's had a little bit of a winding road from
Mhm.
being disappointed not going first overall and then dropping to the Kraken. And then he had some time where he was going into the AHL and then back to the OHL, and then he was all over the place. And
Yeah, it
then
was weird.
last season gets a good consistent season. The AHL was really good. So I think he's gonna break out. I don't know where he's gonna play in the lineup, and he had a great end to the regular season last year. He had like 3 or 4 goals in 4 or 5 games there. So I think he's gonna be a breakout this season. All right, about someone needs to bounce back from last season. There is a really obvious one for this one.
Well, we'll just say it then. Let's say Matty
Not even
Beniers.
years, yeah.
He had such a awesome rookie season, and there were so many people expecting so many great things out of this kid. And it was disappointing to see how little he was putting up on the score sheet. It's not like he was doing nothing all season, but it felt like he was doing nothing all season with how little he was producing otherwise. So seeing him produce more is definitely something that everybody wants to see, especially with his shiny new contract that he has,
Yeah.
and especially how long term it is. It's definitely a bargain considering what his potential is and what his role on this team is going to be. So I love the number that they signed him to, but he needs to produce more. End of story, and I think he can.
I think so too. I mean, he's such a talented player. I mean and he showed that in his rookie season, right? So I think he can bounce back, and with the new coaching staff too, I think he's going to end up being
At
back to
least
his old
60
self.
points.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. He's been playing. He's going to play all over the place too. He get a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
minutes, so yeah. All right, X factor for this season. Situation, player. What do you got?
I'm gonna put it on a player, and I'm gonna make it one of the new guys. I'm gonna say it's Brandon Montour.
Mhm.
He's gonna step in. He's going to be a key offensive player. He's gonna step in, and he's also got a lot of playoff experience. And I think that's gonna matter to a team like this. And I think it's going to make a big difference in how they play. I think he's going to be a leader. I think he's going to be a good vet. I think he's going to show the young guys how to play right. And I think he's just going to produce at a really nice rate in this type of a system. I think he's going to succeed just in general. So I like having him as an X factor as a whole, just being the new presence, the new big guy in the room. And it'd be nice to have that as somebody who can live up to that
Mhm.
contract, you know?
Yeah, right. He also coming off Stanley Cup too, so that's a big thing
Right.
as well. All
Big
right,
motivator.
yeah, big one for sure. All right, let's talk about some rookies or prospects. Who do you think could surprise and make the lineup out of training camp? We're not expecting here.
Um, you know, I had Shane right on the as the obvious choice. So we'll throw in one that we talked about earlier, and that was Evans, Riker
Mm,
Evans. I think he's a good call-up candidate throughout the season, but he could definitely crack the lineup as maybe one of your fourth line guys
mhm,
and be a mainstay for a decent portion of the season. I don't even think you need an injury. I think he's
mm.
someone that can work his butt off in the preseason and training camp and really be like, I'm not going anywhere. You're going to keep me here, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I feel like that's just the type of player that he is and the way that he plays and the way that he works. So I feel like that's just the lesser answer other than Shane Wright is the player that's going to make this team.
I don't think he's surprised to make the team. Although, I mean, he's not a shoo-in, I guess. But and Evans, there's another guy that had a great playoffs last season, 10 points in 18 games, and then he's been with Bylsma a lot. Did play in the NHL last season for a stretch, but yeah, he's another guy that's going to be familiar with the head coach, which is a big thing. So, I mean, I think he could definitely be someone that'll could crack the lineup for sure. All right, let's look other prospects. At the beginning said you love their prospect pool, so there's probably lots of guys you can point out here. Who should everyone be
I
watching
have
this season?
yeah, I had a list and I had to make it shorter. Okay. So we're just gonna touch on three of my favorites, and two of them are from the most recent draft. One of them is one that I had a lot of notes on, and that's Berkeley Catone. I was obsessed with this kid going into this draft. I loved watching him play. He is easily one of the best shooters I have seen in a long time. And if you haven't watched a highlight reel of his, stop wasting your time and just go do it, because it is just phenomenal. And I'm probably overhyping it, but I don't care. I adore watching that kid play hockey, and I can't wait to watch what he's going to do in his draft plus 1 and draft plus 2 years. Because the day that he makes it to the NHL, goalies beware.
Yeah.
Um, but he is definitely at the top of my watch prospects list. He's easily their top prospect that isn't named Shane Wright
Mm.
on just on every list you can possibly imagine for me. Um, Shooter as a whole, great playmaker, great skater. He can play center and wing, but he's mostly a center. Um, but before I just go on a massive tangent, I'm just going to leave it at that because it's supposed to be quick fire. Second, I love him as a player, and he has one of my favorite names for a prospect in the history of forever, and that's Jagger Firkus.
Oh, yeah.
Love the name. Love the name, love the player. And I think he is somebody that they should be really excited about. I feel like he's underrated in a lot of ways because he wasn't probably as highly touted as people were expecting him to be in his draft year. So I'm going to put him on this list for people to watch just on the quick fire, and we'll try and keep it moving along here. And the other one is a later pick from this current draft, from the most recent draft, and that was Clark Caswell. He was someone that over the past couple of years, he definitely fell down a little bit in people's draft rankings, but in my opinion, I still think he's worth a watch, and I think he can move up in some draft, or not in draft, in some prospect rankings, because there's still a lot of talent that he has, and there's still a good amount of speed that he has, and there's underrated skating ability that he possesses. Um, and again, before I go on a tangent, I'll keep it brief. I think he is somebody that will add a lot to their depth pool as a whole. He's not going to be on the team by any means for a number of years,
Mm.
but following the right development path, he's somebody that is easily replacement long term for somebody like
Mm.
your Yanni Gourde or your Jaden Schwartz type player.
Three great picks, and there's so many. I mean, the Kraken have such a great prospect pool for being such a young team, like in the league. It's insane how they've built up their pool to be probably one of the best. And I mean, yes, they got really lot. I mean, they got Matty Beniers right off the bat. That's a pretty good start.
Mm-hmm.
But getting Shane Wright at fourth overall, and then you're getting guys like, well, like Jagger Firkus at 35th overall in the second round, and this guy scored 61 goals last season. Yeah, I mean, come on. And then Berkeley Catton, I feel like he shouldn't have dropped to eighth. So I mean, yeah, it's insane. And he scored 54 goals last season. So I mean, all these guys, they're gonna end up being really key guys for the Kraken, and they're exciting prospects. And I don't know, it's such a great prospect pool overall. So yeah, really excited to watch those guys too. All right, let's talk a couple predictions here. Who's gonna lead the team, forwards and defense?
I'm gonna go with the pattern pick as far as the forward group here, and I'm gonna say Jared McCann is the forward group scoring leader. He did it in 22-23, and he was a phenomenal scorer last season as well. He scored 40 in 22-23, and then he scored 62 points last season. So I think he can easily push the 30 goal mark again this season. I think he can be in the 70-point mark again. I'm not sure how many people on the Kraken are going to be pushing point a game. I think somebody might, and if it is, I think McCann is that guy.
Mhm.
Um, Easily 70 points. If he's pushing 80, I think they're having a really, really good season. And he's probably pushing 40 goals again at that point.
Yeah, it's a good choice, definitely. Where do you see the defense? There's that added Montour now. It's not done as the main as the the obvious one. Who's leading the defense?
I think they're basically fighting it out, and they're probably around the same point total. So you can argue a tie between the two.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't really see either of them overtaking it. I think they're basically just duking it out. So I honestly say it's Montour and Dunn tied.
Definitely.
I,
They'll
I
lead
I
there.
really can see them sitting both at probably 55, 60 points apiece, and really just trading points
Yeah.
left and right constantly. Probably both sitting at about 12 goals
Yeah,
by the end of the year. So I say they split it.
I see that. They definitely both are going to be right there for sure. All right, let's finish the show with a bold prediction or a hot take for this season for the Kraken.
Bold take, hot take or bold prediction. One that kept coming to mind that was just like really ridiculous, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to say it. I'm gonna do it anyway. And if I'm feeling really, really, really bold, and that's um Matty Beniers gets a Selke nomination.
It's
That was my boldest prediction I could come up with, but I'm like, the kid's so freaking good.
yeah.
Like I know it's young, and I know Selkie nominations are so reserved for like established players
Mhm.
constantly, for like history of defensive forwards constantly.
Yeah.
But I feel like he could take such a huge step forward with his offensive abilities along with his defensive abilities. There's just something that makes me feel like he's a future Selkie winner. And even if he doesn't get a nomination, I bet you he gets some votes.
Yeah. I see it. I mean, I've loved Beniers since he was drafted, and because of how mature defensively he was right away, and that's why he was so good on the World Juniors team, as a undrafted guy, and he was one of their best players. So I mean, I think he's one of those guys that definitely could get a vote and be a Selkie winner at some point because he does have that two-way game at such a young age. Yeah, I see it for sure. I will throw a bold prediction. I'm going to say Shane Wright scores 25 goals this season. So, and it's
That's
pretty
bold.
bold because we don't even know where he's going to play in
I
the
like it.
lineup right now. So I'm going to say he scores 25 though. So, all right. Thanks, Jacob, for coming on, talking the Seattle Kraken as we go into this season. I think it's going to be a better season for the team, and we'll see where they kind of fall at the end of the season. Make sure to check out everything at thehockeywriters.com for the Kraken. We got Edgar, who covers the team writing wise. I wasn't able to come on the video, but make sure checking out his work on the Kraken throughout the season as we get going. But check out the Substack as well and everything else we've got on the YouTube channel for all the previews and check them all out. But until our next one, we'll see you next time.